Have you ever wondered why Satan so desperately wanted Moses' body after his death? At first glance, this question might seem strange or even absurd, but its roots are deeply grounded in biblical scripture. Moses, one of the most prominent figures in history, led the Israelites on an epic journey from slavery in Egypt to the entrance of the Promised Land. He was the channel through which God delivered the 10 Commandments to his people, becoming a symbol of faith and leadership. But what happened immediately after his death is one of the greatest mysteries of the Bible. According to the book of Deuteronomy, God hid Moses' body in a secret place. Then, a peculiar celestial event occurred, an intense dispute between the archangel Michael and Satan over the prophet's body. This unusual battle, described in the book of Jude, raises many questions. Why would Satan want the body of a dead man? What were his intentions? To find answers, we need to dive deep into the events surrounding Moses' death and examine this surprising dispute. What could be behind this celestial battle? The story you are about to hear will not only reveal the events and hidden secrets of this moment in biblical history, but will also uncover the intentions and traps set by Satan. Get ready to explore this intriguing narrative and discover the profound lessons and messages it holds about worship. Faith. Imagine a time long ago, right after the floodwaters of Noah's time had receded, and humanity was starting over. People were spreading out over the earth, trying to rebuild their lives. But something strange happened. They all came together with one bold idea, to build a tower so tall that it could reach the heavens. That tower was called the Tower of Babel. But this wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about ambition, pride, and something more hidden, a possible connection to the fallen angels. You see, the story of Babel is more than just humans trying to make a name for themselves. There was something darker beneath the surface, something that caused God himself to step in and put a stop to their plans. So what really happened at Babel? And why would God confuse their languages and scatter them across the earth? Here's the thing. These weren't just ordinary humans trying to build a tower. According to some ancient texts and biblical theories, there may have been a deeper influence, the influence of the fallen angels, those same beings who, before the flood, had corrupted mankind and caused chaos on the earth. The Bible talks about sons of God. These are often interpreted as angels, who came down to earth, took human wives, and bore giants known as Nephilim. But when the flood came, those beings were wiped away, or so it seemed. Some believe that these fallen angels didn't give up so easily, and they still had a hold on humanity, whispering ideas, leading them astray, and even influencing their grand ambitions at Babel. Imagine what that tower really stood for. It wasn't just about reaching the sky. It was a challenge, a way for humanity to try to connect with those higher powers, to become like gods themselves. It was a rebellion against the divine order, an attempt to bridge heaven and earth on their own terms. But God saw right through it. He saw how humanity was once again being influenced by dark forces, and he knew what needed to be done. With one divine move, he confused their languages, making it impossible for them to understand one another, and scattered them across the earth, ending their plot. But here's the question. Were they really just building a tower? Or was this an attempt to open a door, a gateway to something much more sinister? Could it be that humanity, under the influence of these fallen beings, was trying to reach back to the days before the flood, to reconnect with those dark powers that once roamed the earth? The story of Babel is more than just a tale of human pride. It's a mystery, a story of spiritual rebellion, and a reminder that there are forces at play far beyond what we can see. Forces that, even today, are looking for ways to influence and shape the world. And that tower, it was just the beginning of a much larger story, a battle between light and darkness that has been unfolding throughout the ages. So, the next time you hear about the Tower of Babel, think beyond the bricks, beyond the tower reaching into the sky. Think about what was really happening. How fallen angels, humanity, and the divine all collided in one of the greatest mysteries of ancient history. And that brings us to the giants, the Nephilim. Now, these were not your ordinary giants. They were beings of immense strength and mystery, a product of something that shouldn't have happened. The Bible describes them as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. And their presence was so powerful, so destructive, that God decided to cleanse the earth with a great flood. But what happened to them after that? Did they just vanish? Or did their influence continue long after the floodwaters disappeared? You see, the Nephilim weren't just creatures of myth or legend. They were the result of the fallen angels' rebellion, a corruption of God's creation. They stood taller, mightier, and more terrifying than any human, and their purpose seemed to be chaos, war, and the disruption of the world. And while the flood wiped out much of their existence, their legacy lived on in whispers, in ancient tales, and in the fears of those who remembered. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Their story didn't end with the flood. Think about the accounts that appear later in the Bible: Goliath, the giant slain by David, and the tales of giants in the land of Canaan, where the spies of Israel trembled at the sight of these beings. It's as if the remnants of the Nephilim continued to influence the world, leaving their mark wherever they went. They were more than just giants. They were symbols of defiance, the lingering influence of the fallen angels who sought to corrupt mankind. And Satan, the great adversary, knew exactly how to use them. The Nephilim, through their sheer power and size, inspired fear, awe, and often worship. Some ancient cultures revered them as gods, mighty beings who held dominion over the earth. And that's where Satan thrived. Wherever there was worship that strayed from the true God, wherever humanity turned their gaze from heaven to the things of the earth, there he was, ready to corrupt and lead astray. Some say that the Nephilim were part of a grander plan, a way for Satan to distort God's creation, to break the boundaries that separated heaven and earth. By mingling the divine with the human, the sacred with the profane, Satan tried to undermine God's design. The Nephilim were the embodiment of that rebellion, standing as a twisted echo of what humanity was meant to be. But why does this matter today? Because the struggle between light and darkness, order and chaos, continues. The same way the Nephilim once walked the earth, creating fear and confusion, there are influences today that seek to disrupt, to defy, and to pull us away from the divine. The giants may be gone, but the spirit of rebellion, that urge to turn away from what is holy and good, is very much alive. And that's the story of the Nephilim, a warning from the ancient world, a reminder of how easily humanity can be swayed, and a call to look beyond the surface to see the spiritual battle that has been raging since the beginning of time. It's a battle not just of flesh and blood, but of powers, principalities, and the age-old struggle to remain true to God's purpose in a world full of giants, both seen and unseen. And speaking of mysteries hidden in plain sight, let's talk about one of the greatest treasures ever mentioned in the Bible, the treasures of the Temple of Solomon. Picture this: the grandest temple ever built, lined with gold, precious stones, and sacred artifacts. It was a place of unmatched splendor, the very house of God on earth. But when the Babylonians invaded Jerusalem, the temple was destroyed, and its treasures vanished, never to be seen again. Or so we think. You see, legends say that not all of the treasures were lost. Some believe they were hidden away, protected from falling into enemy hands. And there's a theory, one that links this lost treasure to a heavenly guardian, the Archangel Michael. Imagine this: the archangel, warrior of God, assigned to guard and protect what was most sacred. Could it be that Michael himself was entrusted with the treasures of Solomon's temple, hiding them away until the right time? Let's dive deeper into this mystery. The temple was more than just a building. It was a symbol of God's covenant with Israel, a place where his presence dwelt. The treasures inside weren't just valuable. They were holy, imbued with divine significance. The Ark of the Covenant, the golden altar, the menorah, all of these were crafted according to God's specific instructions, and their spiritual power was said to be immense. So immense that even armies and empires feared them. But the Babylonians were relentless. They tore the temple apart, taking whatever they could find. Yet, some records suggest that a select few priests and faithful followers took steps to hide the most precious artifacts before the destruction came. The Ark of the Covenant, in particular, is said to have disappeared without a trace. Where did it go? And more importantly, who was guarding it? Now, this is where the Archangel Michael comes in. Known as the Great Protector, Michael has long been associated with battles against the forces of darkness. If anyone were to be chosen to guard the sacred treasures of God's temple, it would be him. And the theory goes that the treasures, including the Ark, were hidden in a secret location, with Michael acting as their heavenly protector. This would explain why, to this day, despite countless searches and expeditions, the treasures have never been found. They are hidden, protected, waiting. But here's the real question. Why would God hide these treasures? What purpose would it serve? Perhaps it's to keep them safe from being misused or falling into the wrong hands. Or maybe they're being held in reserve for a future purpose, a divine moment when they will be revealed once again. Think about the power these treasures hold, not just materially, but spiritually. The Ark of the Covenant alone was said to part rivers, bring down city walls, and strike down armies. Imagine what could happen if such a treasure were to reappear in our world today. And that's why some believe Michael stands guard. The idea that an archangel would be so deeply involved in the affairs of humanity, protecting what is most sacred, points to a deeper truth, that the spiritual realm is far more active and intertwined with our world than we often realize. The treasures of the Temple of Solomon are more than lost artifacts. They represent God's presence, His promise, and His ongoing story with humanity. So, when you hear tales of hidden treasure or lost artifacts, remember, these are not just stories of gold and jewels. They are reminders of a world beyond our own, where angels guard, protect, and fight for the things of God. And perhaps, somewhere out there, Michael still stands, ready to protect the treasures of the temple until the day they are meant to be revealed again. But let's take a step deeper into the unseen, into a story of rebellion, pride, and a power so great that it nearly shattered the heavens themselves. The story of Lucifer, the light-bearer, who became Satan, the adversary. And here's a twist you might not have heard before. The idea of a book, a secret manuscript, hidden from humanity, that contains the untold truths of Lucifer's fall, a book that reveals the darkest secrets of the spiritual realm. Imagine this, before the world as we know it came to be, before the Garden of Eden was planted, there was a realm of pure glory and light, the kingdom of heaven. And among all the angels, there was one who stood out, who shone brighter than the rest. Lucifer, the most beautiful and powerful of them all. He was created to be perfect, to reflect God's glory, and he stood at the very throne of God, leading the angels in worship. But something changed. Pride crept in, and Lucifer began to desire what was not his: power, dominion, and worship meant for God alone. That pride led to rebellion, and in that rebellion, heaven was split in two. War broke out, angels clashing against angels. A battle of epic proportions that ended with Lucifer and his followers cast out of heaven like lightning, falling to earth in shame and fury. But what if the story didn't end there? What if there was a hidden account, a book of Lucifer, that tells us not just about his fall, but about his plans, his schemes, and the true nature of his rebellion? This book would be unlike any other, a record not just of history, but of a celestial war that continues to this very day. Some say this book contains the secrets of Lucifer's transformation into Satan, how he learned to manipulate, deceive, and twist the truth to draw humanity away from God. It might reveal how he uses pride, greed, and lust as his tools, weaving them into the hearts of men and women, whispering lies that sound like truth. But most importantly, it would show the cosmic struggle between good and evil, a struggle that plays out in the hearts of every human being. The very idea of such a book raises questions. Why would it exist? Could it be that God allows it to show the consequences of pride and rebellion? Or is it a weapon Satan keeps, a guide to how he plans to turn the world against its creator? And what would happen if such a book were found, brought into the light for all to see? Would it reveal the schemes of Satan so clearly that humanity would be forced to make a choice, to see evil for what it is and either reject it or embrace it? Here's something to think about. The Bible tells us that Satan is crafty, always on the move, seeking whom he may devour. But it also tells us that his end is certain, that the victory belongs to God. Yet, until that day comes, the story of Lucifer and his rebellion is like a shadow that hangs over the earth, a reminder of how easily light can be twisted into darkness, and how every heart must choose where its allegiance lies. So, is there truly a book of Lucifer? Or is it a symbol, a reminder of the dark knowledge Satan holds, the tactics he uses, and the ways he corrupts the world? Maybe it's both. A warning and a challenge. A call for us to understand the depths of this celestial conflict and the role we play in it. The story of Lucifer isn't just a tale of the past. It's a living, breathing battle that affects every choice we make, every temptation we face. And as long as that battle continues, we're all part of the story. Part of the struggle to choose between light and darkness, good and evil, truth and deception. And if there is a book out there, one that holds these secrets, maybe its greatest power isn't in the dark knowledge it contains, but in the revelation that despite all of Satan's plans and schemes, there is still a greater power, a brighter light that overcomes the darkness every time. And speaking of revelations that blur the lines between heaven and earth, let's talk about one of the most mysterious visions in the Bible, Ezekiel's encounter with something that defied explanation, a sight that has left scholars and believers wondering for centuries. Wheels within wheels, flashing lights, and a presence that seemed almost otherworldly. Some call it a divine chariot. Others have suggested it might be something even stranger, a glimpse of technology far beyond human understanding. Could it have been a UFO? Picture this. Ezekiel, a prophet living in exile by the river Chebar, looks up one day and sees the heavens open before him. And what he describes isn't just any heavenly vision. He sees a stormy wind, a great cloud with bright flashing lights and fire, and within it, for living creatures, each with 4 faces and 4 wings. But it doesn't stop there. He also sees wheels, great gleaming wheels intersecting one another, moving wherever the creatures moved. And these wheels were covered in eyes, as if they were alive, full of awareness, watching. But here's the part that makes this vision so mysterious. The way Ezekiel describes it, it doesn't sound like anything else in the Bible. The details, spinning wheels, lights moving in all directions, a sound like the roar of rushing waters. It's almost as if Ezekiel was seeing something that his words couldn't fully capture. And it makes you wonder, what if what he saw was more than just a spiritual vision? What if it was an encounter with something extraterrestrial? It's a theory that has fascinated people for years. Some suggest that what Ezekiel saw was a form of divine transportation, a chariot that could cross between realms, piloted by the cherubim, the mighty angels of God. But others take it further, arguing that Ezekiel's vision is one of the earliest recorded encounters with a UFO, a spacecraft piloted by beings not of this world. Think about it. If God wanted to make himself known to Ezekiel, why would he choose such a strange, mechanical form? Why the wheels within wheels, the lights, the intricate movement in every direction? Could it be that this wasn't just a spiritual message, but an encounter with a reality far beyond what humans of that time could understand? Some argue that this vision is a metaphor, a way of describing the glory and omnipresence of God in a way that Ezekiel's mind could comprehend. But others see in it something more literal, a visitation from beings who travel in ways that defy our understanding of space and time. The wheels within wheels could be a description of some advanced technology, something that even our modern minds might struggle to grasp. And those eyes, what if they were more than just symbols? What if they were some kind of sensors, tools for observation, gazing not just at Ezekiel but across all of creation? And if that's the case, then the question becomes, who or what was truly behind this vision? Was it God revealing himself through a form that Ezekiel couldn't understand, or was it something else? An interaction with beings who exist beyond our realm, beings who travel across the cosmos and touch down on Earth for reasons we can only guess at. One thing is certain. Ezekiel's vision shakes the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual, the divine and the mysterious unknown. And whether it was a chariot of fire or a craft from beyond the stars, it speaks to a reality that is far more complex and interconnected than we often realize. A reality where heaven touches earth, and where the divine can appear in forms that are, quite literally, out of this world. So, the next time you look to the sky wondering what's out there, remember Ezekiel's vision. Remember the wheels within wheels, the flashing lights, and the heavenly beings that traveled with a power beyond human imagination. because whether it was a glimpse of God's glory or a peek into the secrets of the universe, it reminds us that we are part of something far greater. A story that stretches beyond our world, into the heavens and perhaps into realms we've only just begun to understand. And speaking of the heavens touching earth, let's talk about one of the most enigmatic and powerful artifacts to ever exist, the Ark of the Covenant. Imagine a sacred chest, gilded in gold, carrying the tablets of the Ten Commandments, Aaron's rod that budded, and a jar of manna. But this wasn't just a box filled with holy relics. It was the very throne of God on earth, radiating power and divine presence. Yet, there's a question that's haunted historians and theologians alike. Was the Ark simply a symbol of God's covenant, or could it have been something more, a kind of divine technology holding powers that even today we can hardly comprehend? Let's take a moment to consider what we know about the Arkansas. It wasn't just a beautifully adorned chest. It was a conduit of unimaginable power. It parted the Jordan River, brought down the mighty walls of Jericho, and would strike dead anyone who touched it without permission. But it wasn't just a weapon. It was a bridge between heaven and earth. Whenever the Israelites carried it into battle, it was as if they carried the very presence of God with them. And when it sat in the Holy of Holies within the temple, it was the place where God would meet with the high priest, surrounded by a cloud of glory. But here's where the story gets really intriguing. What if the Ark was more than just a holy artifact? Some theorists suggest that the Ark might have been a piece of divine technology, something that combined spiritual and physical power in ways we can barely imagine. Think about the way it functioned. When it was carried, its bearers used poles to avoid direct contact, as if it generated some kind of energy field. It was kept veiled, hidden away from common sight, as if looking upon it directly was dangerous. And when the Philistines captured it, they were struck with plagues, as if the Ark itself carried a force that could not be controlled by human hands. Could it be that the Ark was more than just a symbol? That it was a divine machine, something crafted according to God's exact specifications, designed to hold His presence and unleash His power on the earth? Imagine, for a moment, the Ark as a kind of heavenly generator, something that could bridge the gap between the divine and the earthly, a tool that not only signified God's covenant with His people but also demonstrated His power in tangible, even terrifying ways. And here's the mystery. Where is the Ark today? After the Babylonian destruction of the First Temple, the Ark simply disappeared. Some say it was hidden away by the priests, buried in a secret chamber beneath the Temple Mount, or spirited away to another land for safekeeping. There are even legends that it was taken to Ethiopia, where it rests under the watch of monks who have sworn to protect it until it's time to be revealed again. But the real question is, why would God hide something so powerful? Maybe it was to protect the people from its overwhelming power, or to keep it from being used for the wrong purposes. Or maybe, just maybe, the Ark is being held for a time when it will once again be needed, when its power will be unleashed in a way that the world has never seen. Think about it. A device so powerful, so infused with divine energy, that it could change the course of history. A relic that could part waters, level cities, and strike down armies. And yet, also a treasure that could bring people into the very presence of God. If the Ark were to be found today, what would it mean? Would it be a source of peace, a bridge between humanity and God? Or would it become a tool of war, a powerful weapon in the hands of those who would use it for their own gain? The Ark of the Covenant remains one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world. A story of power, of presence, and of something far beyond what we can fully comprehend. And perhaps somewhere hidden away it waits, waiting for the right moment, the right purpose, and the right people to uncover its secrets. Because the story of the Ark is more than just the tale of a golden chest. It's a story of God's promise, His power, and the lengths He'll go to protect, guide, and be with His people. A story that, even now, continues to unfold. If only we knew where to look. And speaking of mysteries hidden from our eyes, there lies another set of writings shrouded in secrecy and controversy. A book that some say holds deeper truths, spiritual secrets, and a glimpse into the spiritual world that few have ever seen. The Book of Enoch. Ever wonder why a book so ancient, one that was once well known among early Jews and Christians, was left out of the Bible as we know it today? And what does this lost book contain that made it so dangerous, so powerful, that it had to be buried away from the eyes of most believers? The Book of Enoch is not just any ancient manuscript. It's filled with visions of heaven and earth, tales of angels and demons, and prophecies of judgment and redemption. But perhaps its most intriguing aspect is how it dives headfirst into the story of those mysterious beings we talked about earlier, the fallen angels, the Nephilim, and their influence on humanity. It reads like a hidden chapter of Genesis, revealing things that the rest of the Bible only hints at. Imagine this: Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, who walked so closely with God that he didn't experience death but was taken up to heaven, is said to have recorded visions that God gave him, visions of the Watchers, a group of angels sent to guide and protect humanity. But instead of fulfilling their holy mission, these Watchers fell into temptation, lusting after human women and breaking the boundaries set by God. Their actions led to the birth of the Nephilim, those giants who roamed the earth, bringing violence, corruption, and chaos. But the Book of Enoch goes further, describing how these fallen angels taught humanity things they were never meant to know: sorcery, weapon-making, the secrets of the stars and the earth. It paints a picture of a world in chaos, where divine beings were teaching humanity to go against God's will, to tap into forbidden knowledge, and ultimately to become something far from what they were created to be. And here's where things get even more intense. The book describes Enoch's journey through the heavens, where he witnesses the throne of God, the punishment of the fallen angels, and the destiny of mankind. It's a book that reads like a celestial drama, with Enoch as the guide, revealing a spiritual realm far more complex and active than we often imagine. But why, then, was this book left out of the Bible? Some believe it's because the truths within its pages were too revealing, too unsettling. It talks about divine beings who fell, taught humanity forbidden knowledge, and nearly caused the destruction of the world. It describes the judgment that awaits these beings, as well as the final fate of the Nephilim. For early church leaders, it might have seemed too dangerous to include too much information about the unseen world, the war between good and evil, and the cosmic battle that stretches from heaven to earth. Others argue that the Book of Enoch was excluded because it didn't fit the theological framework that was being established in the early centuries of Christianity. Its visions were wild, its prophecies vast, and its narrative suggested a spiritual war that felt more like a celestial epic than a comforting sermon. But what if the Book of Enoch wasn't just left out to be forgotten? What if its contents were meant to be rediscovered in a time when humanity needed to remember the depths of the spiritual war we're a part of? A time when the hidden things are brought to light and the mysteries of the past become the warnings of the future? Because that's what the Book of Enoch really is, a warning. A call to be vigilant, to understand that we are part of a story much larger than ourselves. It tells of angels who fell, of humanity's role in the battle between light and darkness, and of a coming judgment that will set everything right. It's a reminder that there is knowledge we are meant to pursue and wisdom we are meant to seek, but also boundaries we are not meant to cross, lest we fall into the same trap as those ancient beings who lost their way. So the next time you hear about the lost books of the Bible, don't just think of them as missing chapters. Think of them as keys to understanding a much bigger picture, a picture of a world where the spiritual and the physical are intertwined, where battles are fought not just with swords but with truth, and where the choices we make today ripple out into eternity. The Book of Enoch may be hidden, but its message is clear. We are part of something ancient, something powerful, and something that stretches beyond the pages of any book into the very fabric of the cosmos itself. And maybe, just maybe, those secrets are waiting to be uncovered, for those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And that brings us to another book of visions, prophecies, and hidden meanings. One that made it into the Bible, but is still cloaked in mystery. The Book of Daniel. Within its pages lies one of the most powerful prophecies ever given. A vision that shook the ancient world and still baffles scholars today. The vision of the four kingdoms. A vision of a colossal statue, made of different metals, each symbolizing a powerful empire that would rise and fall, shaping the world as we know it. Imagine Daniel, a young man taken into exile in Babylon, who rises to prominence as a wise man, an interpreter of dreams. One night, God grants him a vision, a statue like none other. Its head was made of gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, and its legs of iron with feet mixed with iron and clay. And then, a stone, carved out, not by human hands, comes hurtling down, smashing the statue to pieces, and becoming a great mountain that fills the whole earth. What does it all mean? God revealed to Daniel that each part of this statue represented a kingdom, a mighty empire that would rule over the earth. The head of gold was Babylon, the empire of Daniel's time, a kingdom of unmatched wealth and splendor. But like all things, Babylon would fall and a new empire would rise, the silver chest and arms, representing the Medes and the Persians, who would conquer Babylon in one swift blow. Then would come the belly and thighs of bronze, the Greeks, led by the legendary Alexander the Great, whose influence would spread like wildfire across the ancient world. But even that great empire would not last. Next would come the legs of iron, the Romans, a kingdom strong and brutal, that would trample its enemies underfoot and stretch its rule farther than any before it. And then, the feet of iron and clay, a divided kingdom, strong in some parts and weak in others, a reflection of the struggles and conflicts of the end times. But the most powerful part of this vision isn't the rise and fall of empires. It's the stone. That stone, carved without human hands, is a symbol of something much greater than all the earthly kingdoms combined. It represents the kingdom of God, a kingdom that will break every other to pieces, that will stand forever, and that will fill the earth with its glory. Daniel's vision isn't just history. It's a roadmap of the world's spiritual journey. It's a story of power, of pride, and of how every human empire, no matter how mighty, will eventually crumble. And that's the crux of the prophecy. No kingdom, no ruler, no power can stand against the divine. All the gold, silver, bronze, and iron of this world will one day be brought low, and only what is eternal will remain. But here's the hidden part of Daniel's vision: the mixture of iron and clay in the statue's feet. It's a strange combination. Iron, strong and unyielding, mixed with clay, fragile and brittle. It suggests a kingdom that is divided, one that is strong in some areas but full of weaknesses in others. Some believe this points to the world in its current state, a world of alliances and divisions, strength and fragility, where empires are no longer monolithic but are a patchwork of different powers, ideas, and influences. And what about that stone? What does it mean for today? For many, it represents a coming kingdom, a new world order that will not be built by human hands, but will be established by God Himself. A kingdom that will outlast all others, that will break the cycle of rise and fall, and that will bring true justice, peace, and unity to the earth. This vision isn't just about predicting the future. It's about understanding the world we live in now. It's about seeing the spiritual forces at play behind every kingdom, every government, and every movement. It's about recognizing that while nations rise and fall, and while power shifts from one hand to another, there is a greater story unfolding. A story where the final chapter is written not by kings or conquerors, but by the Creator of all things. So, the next time you look at the world's leaders, the power struggles, the conflicts that rage across nations, remember Daniel's vision. Remember that every kingdom has its time, but only one will stand forever. And that kingdom, the one represented by that stone carved without hands, is one that will come in power, in truth, and in a way that will shake the earth to its core. Because in the end, the story of the four kingdoms is not just a tale of empires and statues. It's a prophecy of hope, of a world renewed, and of a time when God Himself will reign over all. And when that day comes, the iron and the clay, the gold and the silver, they'll be just dust in the wind, and what remains will be a kingdom of peace, of righteousness, and of eternal glory. But while Daniel's vision of kingdoms spans the rise and fall of empires, there's another story that hits much closer to the human heart. A story of family, jealousy, blood, and the curse that echoes through the ages. The tale of Cain and Abel. It's a story that begins at the dawn of humanity, in the days just after Adam and Eve were exiled from the Garden of Eden, and it reveals a powerful truth about the darkness that can reside within us and the price of spilled blood. Cain and Abel were the first brothers, the sons of Adam and Eve. Abel was a shepherd, tending the flocks with care and devotion, while Cain was a farmer working the land. They both brought offerings to God. Abel brought the best of his flock, the firstborn, the fat portions, and Cain brought an offering from the fruits of the ground. But God favored Abel's offering over Cain's. And that's where things started to fall apart. Now, Cain's reaction was immediate and intense. He was filled with rage, jealousy, and despair. Imagine the burning in his heart, the feeling of being rejected while his brother stood favored. God spoke to Cain, warning him that sin was crouching at his door, ready to consume him, and that he must rule over it. But Cain couldn't overcome the darkness within. He let it take over, and one day, he called Abel out into the field, where jealousy and anger took hold, and in a moment of fury, he killed his brother, spilling innocent blood upon the ground for the first time in human history. But what happened next was something far deeper than just a murder. The Bible says that Abel's blood cried out to God from the ground. It was as if the very earth itself could not stay silent, bearing witness to the violence and injustice of that act. That cry was a cry for justice, a cry that carried the weight of betrayal, of broken brotherhood, and of a life unjustly taken. It became a curse not just on Cain, but on the ground he tilled, the earth that soaked up the blood of the innocent. But here's the chilling part. That cry didn't end with Abel. It echoes through the ages, through every act of violence, every broken promise, every betrayal. It's the cry of humanity when we harm one another, when jealousy and rage lead us to destroy rather than to heal. And Cain, as the first murderer, became a wanderer, marked and cursed, a symbol of what happens when we let darkness rule over us. There's something about blood. It's sacred. It carries life, and when it's spilled, it demands an answer. Cain's act wasn't just a sin against his brother. It was an affront to life itself, to the Creator who breathes life into every soul. And that's why his punishment was so severe. He became a restless wanderer, driven away from his land, carrying the weight of his crime wherever he went. The ground would no longer yield its strength to him, and he would forever bear a mark that protected him from being killed, but also set him apart as one who had shed his brother's blood. But why does this matter now? Because Cain's story is not just ancient history, it's a mirror. It shows us the devastating power of jealousy, of unchecked anger, and of what happens when we let our worst impulses take over. It's a reminder of how quickly love can turn to hate, and how the cry of innocent blood continues to ring out whenever injustice is done. And yet, there's a deeper lesson too, one of grace, redemption, and hope. Because while Cain was marked and cursed, he was not abandoned. Even in his punishment, God showed mercy, marking Cain so that no one would kill him. It's a complex story of justice and mercy intertwined, of consequences and compassion walking hand in hand. Abel's blood cried out for justice, but there's another blood that speaks a better word, the blood of Jesus, who was betrayed, unjustly killed, and whose sacrifice would redeem not just one act of violence, but all the sin and brokenness of humanity. Where Abel's blood called for vengeance, Jesus' blood cries out for mercy, for forgiveness, and for restoration. It's a story of how, in the end, grace overcomes judgment, and love covers a multitude of sins. So when you think about Cain and Abel, don't just think of a tragic story of two brothers at odds. Think about the deep, powerful truth of how our actions resonate beyond what we see. How jealousy can kill, how blood cries out, and how even in our darkest moments, there is a greater hope, a greater forgiveness that can transform and heal what has been broken. The curse of Cain may have marked the world, but the redemption through Christ changed the story. And that's the beauty of it all, that no matter how deep the wound, how loud the cry of blood from the ground, there is always a grace that reaches deeper, calling us to life, to love, and to redemption. Because that's the heart of the story. A God who hears the cry of blood, who meets justice with mercy, and who turns curses into blessings, again and again, throughout all of human history. And just as the blood of Abel cried out from the ground, there's another story that whispers through the pages of Genesis, a story that has been told and retold, but one whose true meaning is often overlooked, the story of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. We all know how it goes. A crafty serpent deceives Eve, leading her to eat the forbidden fruit and causing humanity to fall into sin. But have you ever wondered, was it really just a serpent? Or was there something far more sinister, more cunning, behind that slithering creature? Let's go back to that moment in the garden. Adam and Eve walked in paradise, living in perfect harmony with each other, with nature, and with God himself. And there, in the midst of the garden, stood the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the one tree from which God commanded them not to eat. It was a simple instruction, yet it held profound consequences. And then the serpent appears. The Bible describes this serpent as the most cunning of all creatures, speaking with Eve and questioning God's command. But the original Hebrew text reveals something deeper. The word for serpent is nachash, which doesn't just mean a snake. It can also mean shining one or enchanter. It hints at a being far more intelligent and deceptive than just an animal slithering on the ground. Many scholars believe that this serpent was, in fact, a manifestation of Satan himself, appearing in a form that could seduce, manipulate, and twist the truth. But why a serpent? And why this tree, this moment, this temptation? Because this wasn't just about disobedience. It was about rebellion, about breaking trust with God and seeking to become like him. The serpent's words to Eve were filled with half-truths and promises of power. You will not surely die. You will be like God, knowing good and evil. It was a calculated lie designed to sow doubt, to make Eve question God's goodness and motives. And it worked. The fruit looked good, desirable for gaining wisdom, and in that moment, humanity's relationship with God shattered. But what if the serpent wasn't just trying to make Adam and Eve disobey a rule? What if the serpent's real goal was to shift humanity's gaze from God to themselves, to make them believe that they could be their own gods, determining right and wrong, controlling their own destiny? It was a subtle but devastating move, planting the seeds of pride and independence from God that would grow into all the sins and struggles we see in the world today. And here's something chilling. The serpent's deception didn't end in the garden. That same voice, the voice that twists truth, that whispers lies, that urges us to seek our own way, is still speaking today. It's in every temptation that pulls us from God, every lie that says we don't need him, every prideful thought that makes us think we know better. The serpent's strategy hasn't changed. Only the faces and the circumstances have. But here's the good news. The story of the serpent isn't just about a fall. It's about a promise. Right there, in the midst of the curse, God spoke a prophecy, a promise of redemption. He said to the serpent, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. This was the first glimpse of the gospel, the first sign that one day, a descendant of Eve would come and defeat the serpent, crush his head, and undo the curse that had fallen over humanity. That descendant was Jesus, who faced the serpent's lies head-on, who resisted temptation in the wilderness, and who, through his death and resurrection, broke the power of sin and death. Where Adam and Eve failed, Jesus succeeded. Where the serpent thought he had won, he was defeated. The cross became the place where the serpent's head was crushed, where the greatest lie was overturned by the greatest truth, that God's love for humanity would not be undone, not by a bite of forbidden fruit, not by the serpent's schemes, not by anything. So when you think of the serpent in the garden, don't just think of a snake. Think of the battle that began that day, a battle of truth versus lies, life versus death, and light versus darkness. And remember that while the serpent is crafty, while his lies are persuasive and his influence is strong, his defeat is certain. Because that curse spoken over him so long ago, the promise that he would be crushed, is a promise that was fulfilled at the cross and continues to be fulfilled every time truth triumphs over deception. Every time a life is redeemed, every time light shines in the darkness. The serpent's voice still whispers, but the truth is louder. The story isn't just about a fall. It's about a redemption that reaches further than the curse, a grace that is greater than any lie, and a victory that was won not by a fruit, but by a Savior who took on the darkness and came out victorious. And that is the heart of the story, that in a world filled with serpents, lies, and temptation, there is a God who is greater, who loves deeper, and who promises to bring us back to the garden once more.